Today's movie kicks off with a chilling disaster thriller inspired by real events on La Palma Island, where a peaceful family vacation turns into a fight for survival against nature itself. Will this family and mankind survive this disaster, or will everything be swallowed by the destruction? Let's begin. At the start of the story, a girl is enjoying her vacation. Suddenly, she realizes that one of her earrings is missing. At first, she assumes she must have accidentally dropped it into the sea while taking photos earlier. Seeing this, her best friend doesn't hesitate for even a second and jumps straight into the ocean to find the lost earring. But the very next moment, strange sounds begin echoing from beneath the water, and the sea starts to boil. Their glass boat shatters, and along with her friend's lifeless body, everyone on board is killed. A few days later, a family of 4 arrives on the same island for a holiday. The island is also known as Volcano Island. However, its volcano had not erupted since 1948. Jaime and her husband had deliberately chosen this trip in an attempt to save their deteriorating marriage. They saw this vacation as their last chance to repair their relationship. While the whole family is getting ready to change clothes for swimming, their elder daughter Sarah finds a pair of earrings lying on the ground. After examining them, her father clearly says they do not belong to anyone in their family. Sarah doesn't pay much attention and casually leaves them on the table. They have no idea that this vacation is about to turn into the most dangerous journey of their lives, where they will face one of the most horrifying natural disasters in history. Meanwhile, in the mountains, Mary from the Geological Survey Department goes for research with a colleague. As usual, they enter a cave. But today, something unusual catches their attention: a cement-like deposit covering the cave walls. Mary has never seen anything like this in her entire career. She immediately starts collecting samples. At the same time, her bearded colleague notices dozens of dead bats lying on the ground. Upon investigation, they discover that carbon dioxide levels inside the cave are extremely high. But what shocks them the most is a massive crack visible in the cave's ceiling. Elsewhere, the director of the geological department is reading a newspaper in his office. The headline reports that a speedboat has been found in the southeastern waters of La Palma, and all the tourists on board are dead. The case is under investigation. Reading this makes the director uneasy. Soon, Mary and her colleague arrive and report everything they found in the cave. Further analysis reveals unusually high levels of carbon dioxide and aluminum oxide in the cave air, something never seen before. Additionally, the island's rainy season has been growing longer, and rainfall has been increasing steadily. The excess water flow is destabilizing the rocks, causing dangerous cracks in the cave. If this continues, there is a strong possibility of an earthquake or landslide. However, the director disagrees. He argues that minor mountain shifts are normal. So far, there is no solid evidence of toxic gas leaks, and the situation is not strong enough to justify declaring a major threat. After being dismissed, Mary and her colleague feel disappointed, but the bearded man remains firm in his theory. He takes Mary to a map and reminds her that, in 1948, a major volcanic incident created a crack several kilometers long, wide enough for a person to walk through. If such an eruption happens again, a huge portion of the mountain could collapse directly into the ocean. If something the size of Manhattan were to fall into the sea, a devastating tsunami would be inevitable. He questions why the director isn't warning the public in advance. The truth is, a few years earlier, the director had made a serious mistake. He once issued a landslide warning that caused widespread panic, but nothing happened. He nearly lost his job because of it. Now he refuses to risk making the same mistake unless the tsunami becomes undeniably real. However, Mary and her colleague don't realize that the director is actually more frightened than they are. In fact, he has already visited the forensic department. The initial post-mortem report states clearly that all the victims on the speedboat died from exposure to extremely high-temperature gas. Carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide were found in their lungs, a clear sign that this is no ordinary case. Back at the resort, Nick's family is still carefree, enjoying the sun and sea. Sarah is sitting near the pool when a girl approaches her and invites her to play beach volleyball. Sarah refuses because she has to take care of her younger brother, who is autistic. Disappointed, the girl walks away. In reality, Sarah wants to make new friends, but she lacks confidence. After coming out of the pool, Her father notices her sadness and encourages her to go play. He promises to watch her brother. Hearing this, Sarah finally decides to join the game. Before she leaves, her father explains some basic volleyball rules to her. Now Sarah goes to play, and the responsibility of watching their son falls on Nick. While playing with his son, Nick suddenly notices his wife laughing and talking cheerfully with a Spanish man. Seeing this, his anger flares up. In that very moment, when he looks back at his son, the child is gone. Panicked, Nick starts searching everywhere. He assumes his son might have gone to the beach looking for his sister. He runs toward the shore, shouting his name. After a while, he spots a small boy standing on a distant rock. When Nick reaches him, he sees that his son is staring fixedly at the ocean. The boy had noticed something strange. Countless turtles gathering in the sea, as if they were preparing to migrate together. Meanwhile, Mary completes further analysis. The water samples taken from the cave show no additional minerals. This clearly indicates that the water recently entered the mountain and reached the cave directly, which means the crack they discovered is very new, at most 2 weeks old. If that is true, everyone on the island is in grave danger. Determined, Mary and her colleague decide to return to the mountain to examine the upper section of the crack themselves. When they arrive, the sight is even more terrifying. One end of the crack has begun sinking downward. They quickly set up their equipment and start measuring. Their fears are confirmed. The crack is continuously shifting. The movement may be slow, but if it continues, a massive disaster is inevitable. At the geological department, employees also begin detecting warning signs. Gas levels around the mountain are rising, and minor tremors are being felt. The director orders immediate contact with the National Guard so that tourists can be evacuated if necessary. At that very moment, Mary calls him. When he learns that they are still on the mountain, he panics and tells them to abandon their equipment and descend immediately. Suddenly, white smoke starts emerging from the crack. Seeing this, they run for their lives. On the way down, they encounter campers. Mary realizes this is a clear sign of a volcanic eruption and screams at everyone to run. Sometime later, Mary regains consciousness in a hospital bed. The director informs her that her colleague is in critical condition and in a coma due to toxic gas exposure. This time, a large amount of poisonous gas has erupted from the volcano. Fortunately, no one has died, but the director knows this is only the beginning. When toxic gases begin to emerge, the next stages are ash and then molten lava. If a section of the mountain collapses into the ocean, a tsunami will follow, one that could threaten millions of lives worldwide. Several continents could be affected. Small island nations could be swallowed entirely. The evacuation alone could cost billions of dollars. Even worse, panic and chaos could claim more lives than the disaster itself. That is why the director still wants to wait for stronger evidence. But Jaime refuses to wait any longer. She firmly tells the director that if action isn't taken now, the damage will become impossible to control later. Reluctantly, he accompanies her to meet the mayor. However, the mayor has the same stance. Unless there is 100% certainty, he is unwilling to risk alerting the public. Another false alarm could cost him his position. No matter how much Mary and the director try to convince him, the mayor decides to wait. Meanwhile, at the resort, Nick and Jaime argue again, this time about their son. Jaime accuses Nick of not immediately telling her that their son had gone missing. Nick angrily replies that Jaime doesn't pay attention to the children at all. No one in the family seems willing to understand each other, and Sarah's life also takes a turn for the worse. The girl she befriended just yesterday scolds her harshly today because Sarah accidentally shared one of her private videos forward. Now, as tensions rise both within the family and beneath the island itself, the real disaster is about to begin. The video had actually been recorded secretly by a boy, but all the anger was taken out on Sarah. Sarah breaks down completely and runs to her room, crying uncontrollably. At the same time, she hears her parents arguing loudly in the next room. She no longer feels like staying there even for a single moment. Quietly, she goes to the airport and calls her uncle, who lives in Norway, asking him to book her a return ticket. Her uncle asks why she wants to come back alone, but Sarah doesn't explain anything. After hanging up, her uncle becomes worried and calls his sister, Jaime. But at that moment, Jaime is doing yoga and doesn't hear the phone ringing. Meanwhile, the geological department receives even worse news. Continuous microtremors begin striking the island, and their epicenter is gradually shifting upward. The meaning is clear. The volcano could erupt at any moment. The director immediately orders air traffic control to halt all flights to and from La Palma because volcanic ash can damage aircraft engines and cause plane crashes. But it is already too late. Suddenly, a massive explosion echoes from the mountaintop, leaving everyone stunned. At that exact moment, the flight Sarah is on is speeding down the runway. The pilot has already received orders from air traffic control to abort takeoff, but because the runway is short, the plane is forced to lift off. Just then, Jaime finally notices her brother's missed call and quickly calls him back. When she learns that Sarah has gone to the airport, she panics and runs to find her husband. Amid the thick volcanic ash spreading across the sky, the deafening sound of an aircraft is heard, followed by a terrifying explosion. Jaime covers her mouth in horror. She has no idea whether her daughter was on that plane or not. As Jaime and Nick are about to drive to the airport, Jaime receives a message from her brother. Working at the foreign ministry, he has already been informed about the plane crash. Rescue teams are active, and all survivors are being transported to the island's only hospital. When Jaime and Nick reach the hospital, they search for hours but cannot find Sarah. The staff shows them the passenger list from the flight. The names that have check marks beside them belong to those who have been brought to the hospital. The rest are missing. Sarah's name is on the list, but there is no check mark next to it. Seeing this, both parents are completely shattered. Exhausted and broken, they return to the hotel, not knowing what to do next. But as soon as they open the door to their room, they are stunned. Sarah is sitting inside, completely safe. In reality, just as Sarah was about to board the plane, she received a message from her friend. The friend sincerely apologized and asked for forgiveness. Before the plane took off, Sarah got off. Later, her friend realizes that, unknowingly, that very message had saved Sarah's life. After this incident, their friendship becomes even stronger. Meanwhile, conditions at the geological department continue to worsen. Scientists believe that people should immediately be ordered to evacuate the island, but the mayor still refuses to agree. He argues that such an announcement could cause panic and stampedes, leading to casualties. In the past, ash has emerged from the volcano without leading to massive destruction. If this turns out to be another false alarm, everyone's jobs could be at risk. When the director realizes that the public still won't be alerted, he makes a decision himself. He orders all his staff to immediately leave the island and decides to stay behind as the last person. Mary is not happy with this decision. She also has a younger brother for whom she is responsible. But then she learns that her brother is drunk and causing trouble at a bar. When she goes to get him out, the police instead arrest her for interfering with official duties. When her brother sobers up, he realizes his mistake. He goes to the police station to meet her and innocently promises that he will hire the best lawyer for her. But time is running out. The volcano could erupt at any moment. Now the question is, how will this brother and sister escape this island of death? But this is only the beginning of the great destruction. The locals know that once ash starts coming out of a volcano, the next stage is a full-scale eruption. If that happens, a massive section of the mountain could collapse into the ocean, triggering a tsunami hundreds of meters high, perhaps the largest natural disaster in human history. That very night, white smoke once again begins rising from the volcano's mouth, like a sleeping monster preparing to awaken. At that same time, Nick and his family are still swimming in the water, completely unaware that death is slowly approaching them. Suddenly, the phone rings. Jaime answers and sees it is her brother calling. He tells her that the government already knows the truth, but is hiding the news to prevent public panic. He has secretly booked them seats on a ferry that will reach the nearby island of Tenerife within minutes. From there, they can catch a flight home. Only 20 minutes remain before the ferry departs. Without wasting a second, Jaime quickly gathers her husband and children to leave quietly. But Sarah insists that she wants to take her friend Sherry along. She repeatedly calls her, but there is no answer. When Jaime says there is no time left and a tsunami could strike, Sarah reluctantly agrees to leave with her family. However, as soon as they step outside, they realize there isn't a single taxi on the road. Time is slipping away fast. Suddenly, Nick gets an idea. He stops a truck and forces the entire family inside. Before the workers can understand what is happening, Nick drives off with the truck. Soon the workers chase them all the way to the ferry terminal. To ensure his family's safety, Nick shouts at Jaime and the children to board the ferry. He stays behind and is surrounded and beaten by the workers. Finally, he gives them his wallet, and only then do they let him go. But by then, it is too late. Nick helplessly watches as the ferry carrying his family slowly moves away into the distance. Meanwhile, Sherry is at the beach when she notices dozens of missed calls on her phone. She immediately calls Sarah. Sarah tells her to somehow get to Tenerife. Otherwise, everything will be over. Within minutes, violent tremors begin shaking the mountain. Sitting alone in his office, the director immediately understands that the danger is now imminent. He calls the mayor's office and demands that an emergency evacuation alert be issued. After missing the ferry, Nick rushes to a speedboat rental center, trying to rent a boat to Tenerife. But as soon as the emergency alert sounds, the staff refuses him. Just then, a friend Nick met at the hotel arrives. He tells Nick that he has bribed a sailor. They quickly rush to the shore, where the sailor is waiting. He has already purchased the last ticket for Nick. Relieved, they board the boat. But suddenly behind them, the volcano erupts in full force. Just as the boat is about to depart, a woman carrying a small child runs toward them, crying and begging to save her baby. Nick hesitates for only a moment, and then gives up his seat to the woman and her child. His friend is heartbroken to see this, but Nick silently walks away. In the hospital, the bearded scientist regains consciousness due to the thunderous explosions of the volcano. Stepping outside, he understands the seriousness of the situation, but he does not panic. He had anticipated this. After changing his clothes, he heads straight to the director's office, wanting to stand beside him in the final moments. Meanwhile, Nick watches the fire and lava rising from the mountain in the distance. He doesn't know where to go anymore. Finally, he calls Jaime and tells her to take care of the children. Perhaps he may never return. At the same time, Mary's brother somehow manages to obtain the keys to the police station and frees his sister. But while leaving, he also releases another prisoner locked in a nearby cell. As they step out of the police station, they unexpectedly run into Nick. And now, with the volcano fully awake and a tsunami on the verge of forming, fate is about to bring all their paths together. Nick tells them that all the boats have already left, but Mary's brother says he still has a speedboat that he had secretly hidden during a fishing trip. Hearing this, a spark of hope lights up inside Nick. The three of them rush toward the shore, and in a hidden corner, they indeed find the speedboat. Just as they are about to start it, a man suddenly appears behind them with a gun. It is the same prisoner whom Mary's brother had freed earlier. Now he wants to steal their boat. Mary's brother tries to reason with him, saying there is room for one more person on the boat. But the man wants the entire speedboat for himself, as his accomplices are on their way. During the heated argument, the man fires a shot, and Mary's brother is hit. Mary runs to him, but within moments, he dies in her arms. Just then, the other criminals arrive. Nick immediately grabs Mary's hand and pulls her onto the boat. Because the attacker still has the gun, the others hesitate to move forward. Somehow, Nick and Mary manage to start the speedboat and race away from the island that is about to be swallowed by the volcano. At that very moment, Nick receives a message from his brother-in-law. The message says that on Tenerife there is a safe zone, and reaching it is now the only way to survive. Nick quickly pulls Mary properly onto the boat. She is frozen with fear, as if her legs have no strength left. Just in time, Nick steers the boat in another direction, away from the incoming tsunami. Meanwhile, at Tenerife's airport, preparations are underway for the last flight. Jaime has reached the boarding gate with her son and Sarah. During passport verification, the staff notices that Jaime has an extra passport. She explains that her husband stayed behind and might arrive soon. The staff then gives them yellow wristbands which function as boarding passes. Only those wearing them can board the plane. But Sarah keeps looking back, worried about her friend Sherry. Suddenly, she sees that Sherry has arrived at the airport, but she doesn't have a boarding pass. Without thinking twice, just moments before takeoff, Sarah removes her father's boarding pass from her bag and gives it to Sherry, bringing her along. Meanwhile, James and her son are already seated inside the aircraft, but Sarah hasn't returned yet. The plane prepares for takeoff. Panicked, James decides to get off the plane with her son. People try to stop her, but she refuses to listen. At the same time, the director and the bearded scientist put on protective suits and reach the mouth of the volcano. They know that leaving the island is now impossible. Standing fearlessly near the crater, the bearded man jokingly takes out a bottle of decades-old red wine from his pocket. But before he can take a sip, the volcano, silent for 78 years, erupts with full force. With thunderous explosions, the entire island splits into two. A massive section of the mountain collapses straight into the ocean, instantly creating waves hundreds of feet high. Inside the plane, Sarah and Sherry return to their seats. They look for Jaime and her brother, but the staff urgently instructs everyone to fasten their seatbelts because the plane is about to take off. Sarah has no idea that her mother and brother are still outside searching for her. Luckily, Jaime receives a message from her brother just in time. It says there is another safe zone in Tenerife where they can survive the tsunami. Jaime immediately runs in that direction. Her son, though autistic but exceptionally skilled in geography, calculates the location within seconds. Some airport staff nearby follow them. Just then, the tsunami crashes toward the airport. As the plane begins moving on the runway, the ground splits apart. On the other side, Nick and Mary race toward the safe zone in their speedboat at full throttle. Their phone batteries die, but at the very last moment, they reach the safe zone. When they step ashore, they see that many people are already gathered there. This was all possible because of Nick's brother-in-law. After consulting experts, he had identified the safest zone. The tsunami spreads outward in a ring-like pattern. On the eastern side of Tenerife, two massive waves collide with each other and cancel out, making that area the safest. Afterward, risking his job, the brother-in-law turns on a microphone himself and informs the media about the safe zone's location. That is why emergency alerts reach people's phones and so many lives are saved. Or children anywhere. He learns from others that the entire island has been devastated and the last flight has also crashed. Hearing this, Nick breaks down. He believes he may be the only surviving member of his family. Just then, a familiar voice echoes in the distance. Surprisingly, despite the plane crash, some passengers have survived. Sarah regains consciousness. Sherry is lying unconscious. Sarah immediately lays her flat on the ground and performs CPR. With the help of a flight attendant, Sherry's life is saved. When they step out of the wreckage, the world looks completely destroyed. This tsunami has caused damage in many parts of the world. Several small island nations have been entirely submerged beneath the sea. Nick and Jaime both believe they may never see Sarah again. But then, a rescue helicopter arrives. Their son is the first to recognize Sarah. Astonishingly, despite such massive destruction, the entire family is reunited once again. Only one person stands quietly at a distance. In this disaster, she has lost her brother. She knows her life will never be the same again. If you appreciated the effort behind this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.